It was August 2012, prior to the presidential election, when stories started to come out that the Environmental Protection Agency had a whole bunch of regulations it was sitting on. A whole bunch of regulations ready to go, but not until after the presidential election, because they didn't want it to affect Obama's reelection. So we have a federal Department of Government that was conducting itself in a blatantly partisan political fashion to try and get Obama reelected by concealing its true activities. Down the street from the Environmental Protection Agency, actually, I believe it's across the street, directly across the street from the Environmental Protection Agency, is the Internal Revenue Service. While the EPA was covering up and concealing the disastrous regulations it was going to unleash on the American people, killing jobs, killing enterprises, killing commerce, killing our gross domestic product, the Internal Revenue Service was going after conservative, but especially Tea Party groups, to cripple them before the election, to prevent them from advocating points of view, not politics, points of view that disagreed with the President of the United States. Pretty damn unbelievable. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act with the Environmental Protection Agency, an agency that was held in contempt in litigation we had about a decade earlier for destroying information, public information that was subject to our Freedom of Information Act. This time we really asked for two simple things: a complete list of the regulations that the agency was working on at whatever stage, and with whom the agency was consulting. Any outside groups and so forth and so on, any politicians. So, ladies and gentlemen, we couldn't get that information. We got little spurts of information. But having done this for 25 years, and the staff at Landmark Legal Foundation having done this for years, wonderful, wonderful lawyers who work hard, get modest incomes, we could tell early on that we were facing an agency that was in full cover-up and obstruction mode. They forced us to sue them. We went into federal court, and from day one they lied about their searches. From day one they lied about the information that they had, or might have had. They were slow-walking this thing and dragging it out, hoping that we would go away, hoping that this federal judge, Royce Lamberth, a terrific judge, would just get tired of it. And in fact, they even filed a motion for summary judgment a year or so ago, claiming they delivered everything they were supposed to deliver, which was negligible, and the court should shut it down, and a liberal judge probably would have. We pointed out to the judge that there were a number of very serious concerns that we had in terms of production, and we filed a motion seeking discovery. That is, the right to, among other things, conduct depositions. And that's rarely done in a FOIA case. But the judge approved our motion. And Landmark Legal Foundation deposed the former administrator of the EPA, Jackson, the deputy administrator of the EPA, and several other senior officials at the EPA, including the individual in charge with processing Freedom of Information Act requests. And in some cases, we received very troubling answers, some of which were, playing dumb, rope-a-dope. But we learned that numerous platforms where information is kept were not searched and had been destroyed, including government-issued Obama phones, we'll call them, cell phones. The texting information was missing. They were using private email accounts to conduct public business. Many of these private email accounts had been cleansed, much like you see at the IRS. And all the way up to Friday evening last week, the EPA files papers with the federal court Friday evening saying, we have to withdraw one of our declarations. A declaration is a document signed under penalty of perjury to the court declaring something that is relevant and material to the litigation. In this case, the individual claiming to have conducted a search that he never conducted. How do you sign a declaration under penalty of perjury, file it with a court, not having done what you said you did? A few months ago, we filed papers with the court. We sought sanctions for spoliation. I talked about spoliation months ago. Spoliation is the destruction of information in whatever form during the course of litigation. We sought sanctions for that. We sought not just consequential damages, but punitive spoliation sanction damages. And we sought the appointment of an independent investigator, or perhaps an inspector general or whatever, to try and get to the bottom of this. And of course, we sought our fees because we're a tiny little nonprofit organization up against the Environmental Protection Agency that has billions of dollars to throw at everybody, and that's what it does. Now, keep in mind something here. What about the farmer? What about the homeowner with a dispute with the EPA about a creek in their backyard? What about the small businessman in a dispute with the EPA? What about a citizen who wants information about what the EPA is doing? That's the point of the Freedom of Information Act. You see, they have so many resources and so many lawyers and outside lawyers, the U.S. Attorney's Office. They can beat you down. They can stretch you out. They can run up your costs. That's not what the FOIA is supposed to be about. And yet that's exactly what it's about when it comes to the EPA and this government. Although the EPA plays favorites, left-wing, anti-growth, primitive organizations who are pushing their agenda, they file their FOIA requests, and I guarantee you they get responses very quickly because they play their inside-outside game. In other words, they're colluding. But because we're a conservative organization that believes in free enterprise and government accountability, they decided to take a different track, didn't they? Bad faith every step of the way. So the judge ruled today, and he denied Landmark's motion for spoliation sanctions. However, he gave a tongue lashing to the Environmental Protection Agency, a brutal tongue lashing. And while some people will say, well, what good does that do? Because that was my initial impression. I got to think about it. If you're litigating against the EPA, or you're a future litigant against the EPA, they're fighting regulations that the EPA is putting out in some other form, you now have a federal court issuing an opinion about the misconduct, about the incompetence, about all kinds of outrageous conduct by the Environmental Protection Agency in the production of documents. That should help future litigants, future citizens challenging regulations in their dealings with the EPA in court or in administrative bodies, because it demonstrates that this EPA under Obama is not only out of control, it's ideologically driven. Not that you didn't know this, but now the evidence is beyond challenge. And so what they do cannot be trusted. What they file in court cannot be trusted. So you litigators out there, you know to seek, as you need to, temporary injunctions, protective orders, do whatever you have to do, and you can use this case as an example of why the EPA cannot be trusted to secure information because of its conduct in the Landmark Legal Foundation case. An EPA spokesman was asked about this case, and the spokesman said, we're happy the court didn't issue sanctions. In other words, they were scared to death, as they should have been, that the court would eventually drop the hammer on them, maybe direct further investigation. The court did not do that. But the court did enough to provide, as I just said, a basis upon which current litigants and future litigants against the EPA, or challengers against the EPA, can argue as a matter of fact that that agency cannot be trusted to follow the law or to secure documents either through purposeful evasion or incompetence. But it doesn't much matter. Seek your injunctions and seek your protective orders. And I want to thank the lawyers at Landmark Legal Foundation. We're involved in many, many cases. This was a major case that we were involved in and brought it to victory and success in exposing what the EPA does internally. We got a very nice email from another group and another lawyer who's been fighting them, thanking us, telling us that they, in fact, are going to take our litigation strategy and implement it. So the EPA, let me tell you, fools at the EPA, you're in for a hell of a lot more. We don't give up, and we never give up. Period. Thank Judge Lambert. This is a very earnest and studious man who tries to do the right thing and worked very hard on this case. It's a tough case. And I definitely want to thank the lawyers at Landmark Legal Foundation for all the work they do, unheralded all the time, just outstanding, against these big, powerful, bully, well-heeled agencies and departments. So it's a victory. We expose the EPA for what it is, not just talk about it Not just read articles about it, but did it. And this will help future litigants who have to take on this behemoth, which really is not about clean air and clean water. It's about destroying the industrial heartland of this country, destroying the lifestyle that you enjoy in this country, and dragging us back. Because you see, man is the problem. Man destroys the environment. Man has to be controlled. That's the whole point of this phony global warming climate change nonsense. It gives the government power the government doesn't have. It seizes it to reach everywhere and anywhere. Oh, look at that. Because now they're regulating the atmosphere. I mean, what is carbon dioxide, ladies and gentlemen? It is a tiny element, a tiny percentage, I should say, of the atmosphere. Almost insignificant. They can't, you see, regulate condensation, which is the biggest part of greenhouse gases. Condensation is considered a greenhouse gas, and yet most of us don't consider that a pollutant. Do you want to know why? Because greenhouse gases aren't pollutants. Greenhouse gases are the gases in the atmosphere that make life possible. And carbon dioxide, if we had no carbon dioxide, would be an ice cube or an ice ball, a snowball. But we're going to regulate carbon dioxide, like we have the power to regulate carbon dioxide. The sun determines how much carbon dioxide there will or won't be. We can't regulate anything. It's just so moronic. And everybody has to go along. Even in the coldest winter in modern times, everybody has to play along with the phony science and the fraudsters, because that's not what it's about, science. It's about centralized government control. It's about the iron fist. Everywhere you look. Obamacare is not about health care. It's about control. Sad and pathetic.